Welcome to Scrappy to Scalable, the podcast where we explore human-centered AI designed to level the playing field, empowering small and mid-sized businesses to compete with the giants.
Hi, my name is Philippe Crook. I am one of the co-founders of Caldor Dynamics. We're a company that helps small and medium-sized business grow through lead generation systems, marketing content systems, and human-centered AI to help them grow and scale. And today I am really excited to bring Jennifer Selby Long. She has had the front row seats to how some of Silicon Valley's top companies scale. As a founder of Selby Group, she coached and aligned leaders at Cisco, LinkedIn, Airbnb, Mozilla, and Sienna, guiding executive teams through the high-stakes decisions that shape culture and growth. She's helped tech leaders turn chaos into clarity, and today, she's sharing what she learned from watching and advising the people who built some of the most influential companies in the world. Jennifer, I am so excited to talk to you. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's going to be a really fun conversation. I love all of your experience, and especially in the tech world, and some of the companies you worked with are super impressive. I want to pick your brain a lot, but before we get into the good, meaty questions, can you tell me a little bit about your company, and a little bit of your journey?
Sure. So, our firm is now 27, 28 years old.
Wow.
Started after I had done a stint at Nestlé, not a tech company. But prior to that, I had worked in IT and I had been in the knowledge management space in IT. And so that is really what my entry to the world of tech and the Silicon Valley was. My first client in the Silicon Valley was Cisco Systems. And the very first project I did with them was even prior to my Nestle years. And I believe it was maybe 5,000 employees and contractors all together at the time. And by the time I wrapped up all of the work that we were doing with Cisco, Cisco was at, well, I don't know what their total employees were, but my client there had 40,000 of them or something like that.
Wow.
It was absolutely enormous at that point in time. So it was pretty cool to see one company go through all those stages of growth over time, up to what was really to top scale for them, as big as they were ultimately going to get. But I've also really enjoyed working with very small firms, and we have clients who have left larger firms. They got that startup hunger. It's something on their bucket list. They really, really want to do it, and so they go do a startup, and we're there with them for the startup as well. So it's been
Well,
fun.
I'm sure that's been a wild ride seeing something grow that fast. And I assume, like, most of our listeners are going to be small to medium sized businesses
Yeah,
who are either stuck or they want to grow and they just don't know how. So
yeah.
I assume a lot of the principles that you see in big, huge companies, if you apply them to the small companies, they can grow bigger. So I want to talk a little bit and dig into some of the
Yeah,
fundamentals that you need to have in order to scale a company. So
yeah.
let's take it from the very beginning in a small company. What are some of the key foundational items that you
Yeah.
need to see or you want to see in a company before they start to
Yeah.
scale?
Well, bearing in mind that our primary space where we spend most of our time is the executive coaching space with senior leaders and looking at their orgs. Those who are looking for like a specific product recommendation for a platform are going to be disappointed. We don't advise directly in that space. What we look at is what are all those other things that you need to grow that firm. And as a coach, of course, I say an awful lot of things start from the inside, the heart and the head, and come out. And so one of probably the biggest gaps that I see very early on for a firm is the founders almost never come out of sales. That is not their background. They come out of deep expertise in whatever it is that the product is or the service. And there's in companies, there's often a lot of tension between sales and whatever the product or service part of the business is. And so not only do they not have a sales background, they sort of have an icky response to sales. And the problem with that is, as the founder, You are sales, right? You
Yeah.
really, really are. A firm has to it just has to get to a larger size before that becomes somebody else's job. And so the starting point is to look at how can you re-examine your own relationship with sales and not just kind of tolerate it, but truly embrace it. Embrace yourself as the chief sales officer. I went through this journey myself. We're proudly small. We don't intend to scale. But even to be proudly small, you have to get comfortable with sales because nobody, absolutely nobody wants to talk in the sales cycle to anyone other than the founder. Forget it. You are sales. And so one of the things that I started doing, it's very little, but I would say to myself, look, last year I was the top salesperson for Selby Group again. Woohoo. And I would tell my friends this over dinner. And and I'd say to my husband, I was number one in sales again this quarter. And so by having some fun with it, and then for people who go, oh, that's fantastic. I go, and I am the only salesperson for Selby Group. And so it'll become a big laugh for everyone. Instead of letting yourself be all tense about this, oh, sales, yuck, I'm not a salesperson. How quickly can I get this off my plate? For a founder, you must figure out how you're going to embrace this from the inside out. What is it that your product is doing that is bigger than just what it does? What is it that is exciting about your product? More importantly, who are your customers? What are the problems they have that this is going to help them with? Do you understand their businesses? How much time are you spending? I'm doing the little finger wag here because none of us spend enough time really, truly putting ourselves in our prospects' shoes. We don't spend enough time asking about their business, learning about their pain points. By the way, I don't mean the pain points that have to do with your product. I mean all the pain points. What is it that most worries them? What is that is most satisfying for them as a human, as an individual human? Because you want to get to know these people as three-dimensional people. And then you can look at where your product fits in or your service and where it does not. And you know what? Bonus points if where it doesn't fit, you can help connect them with someone who might help them with a solution. Because then you've shown that you care. You've shown that you care. For small business, that's vital.
It's so important that you say that. My co-founder is from the operations space for 30 plus years in operations and manufacturing. And there's a definite difference between he and I. I'm on the sales and marketing side, and I'm always like, how do we sell this? How do we sell this? How do we sell this? That is my number one thing
Yeah.
that I keep talking to him about. It's like, we got to sell this. How do you market it? And
Yeah.
how do you make that shift from
Wow.
I'm asking personally so I
Oh.
can tell my co-founder, do you get an operations person to switch from the operations mindset to more of a sales marketing mindset, or
Yeah.
at least respect the sales and marketing team?
Well, so I'm going to go into a little bit of what's known as a positive psychology. I promise it won't be woo woo and it's not therapy, but the first thing that I think those of us who don't come out of the sales and marketing background must do is recognize our own negative self-talk in that space and identify it as negative self-talk, not fact. Not fact, right? It's an internal opinion. Secondly, we need to tell that voice, thanks, I've got this. Buzz off. Don't need to hear you right now. Really, go away, go away. And then oddly, I'm getting very specific, very prescriptive here. After you've done that, I recommend that you do something that Dr. Shirzad Shamin recommends. He's a neuroscientist, and he talks about doing little tiny tactile exercises. Literally do this and completely focus on how it feels. For those listening, all I'm doing is rubbing two fingers together with such focus and attention that I'm really feeling every whirl and ridge. And what this does is it's called mental command. And every founder needs mental command at 90 or 100%, right? So commanding that emotional state, commanding your mind away from it and saying, okay, I'm totally focused on this. Give that a couple of minutes. Then ask yourself, what's the gift in this situation? What's the gift in this situation? If I can personally figure out or help my sales lead to figure out how this solves a problem for someone, who are those people for whom this would really be incredibly helpful? Then that allows more people to benefit. It's not just the individual who's buying either. It's everyone in the firm, right? Everyone in the client company is going to win. And so seeing that there's a gift in this. Now, for you, that might not be the gift that comes to mind. Look, more superficial gifts are totally legit. Like, we'll sell enough to make payroll. That's not real superficial for the people on payroll. That's actually pretty deep. That's pretty deep and meaningful. And so looking at what is the gift, if I stop resisting this thing that just is, it's very fundamental to the business succeeding, and instead look at the gift in it. What if I embrace it, whether I'm the one doing it or not? But early on, you're probably going to be the one doing it. So it's about developing that love affair with that process. I do find, I will tell you, more startups, in my observation, fail. They always say, well, we ran out of cash. We ran out of cash. We ran out of money. But if you dig a little deeper, it's more that they didn't really start with the people who are on the receiving end of the product or service. And so the love affair was with what they had built, not so much what was the need of the people who would buy it. And so, yeah, they ran out of money because they didn't get customers to buy it, or they didn't get enough customers to buy it. And so I really can't overemphasize how important it is to really get in there and understand those people as humans, as leaders of the particular types of businesses that they have, as people facing some fundamental challenges, and maybe even just a lot of irritations that distract from what's important to them, and to just really, really go there on putting yourself in their shoes, aka empathy, so that you can see very quickly where your product or service helps, where it doesn't, or if it's not at all, well, you've nurtured a relationship. That's actually a win. That's not a failure. That's not a loss. They might need you later.
Yeah,
Or
it's
they might
interesting.
know somebody who needs you later.
Yeah, you never know who can connect you to who, right? And
Never
that's
know.
one of the things that has been a common theme in all of the podcasts that we've done.
Is it?
Almost every single one of the
Mhm.
guests have talked about people.
Mhm.
Then and our business is about systems and AI, but ultimately it comes down to people, how you treat them, how you groom them to grow into leadership positions. And it's something that we really value at Caldor Dynamics, is the human-centered part of it, because AI is pretty amazing and it can do amazing things, but
Yeah,
you have to have a human in the loop. It's not the end all be all.
for sure. For sure. As someone said the other day, I'm sorry, I don't recall who it was. Look, you can give AI work to do, but you can't hold it accountable. You need humans who can take the accountability for the work, who can take the accountability to train and direct that bot to do what you need it to do it in an ethical way, to not, send your customers' data all out all over the place. All these important things, the accountabilities are human, entirely human. And certainly we talk about AI as if it's a thing. Of course, it is not a thing. There are AI tools that have been around for a decade, and they're very well refined, and they're very specific to particular tasks. There are, these large language models are what's new to many of us over the last year and a half, 2 years. And so, AI is not a thing. It's a lot of different things. And there needs to be a human interfacing with that AI, being accountable for what comes out of the AI and continuously improving it so that we get less flaws, hallucinations, errors of fact. Just had one of those. We saw a large, famous global consulting firm had to eat crow and refund a big chunk of the fee. I want to say it was $750,000 in fees they had to refund because they submitted a report to the client and it had errors of fact in it and miscalculations that were all done by AI.
Oof.
And they did not hold themselves accountable enough to check it. And so I didn't think they came out of it looking any better by their response. Their response was, um, we acknowledge there were errors generated by AI. We didn't catch them. Nonetheless, these were not material and did not impact our findings. And that's why they settled on refunding part of the fee and not all. And I went, God, you sound like a bunch of weenies right now. Oh,
It is going to
oh,
be really critical, I think, moving
wow.
forward as AI becomes more and more integral into a lot of these businesses. Is the approval process, the security process. There's going to be so much that has to be overseen because
Yes,
it can just hallucinate and go crazy and make up
yes.
stuff that you don't really want to have in your reports at all.
Well, one of the things that I've found AI helpful for, by way of example, is I'll generate a LinkedIn post and I'll look at it and I'll go, oh, I feel like, I don't know, it's a little clunky. Let me run it through AI and say, make this flow more smoothly. But, last week, one of them came out with a complete error of fact. It said AI can predict resistance to change. And I went, where did that come from? Absolutely false. AI cannot predict resistance to change. Even humans are really great at predicting exactly where resistance will come from. And I don't frankly think that is the single most important thing. The single most important thing is understanding as a leader, how are you going to move people through change, which of course is so vital to scaling your business because everything changes as you scale.
Well,
I mean, literally everything, everything.
let's talk about that a little bit more.
Okay.
So when you are transitioning from founder to salesperson, or you're trying to grow your small
Yeah.
business, what kind of mindset do founders need to adapt or adopt
Yeah.
to in order to really scale? Because I don't think that when you're starting and when you're growing, you can have the same mindset. So what would you say would be the most critical mindset shift?
I'm shaking my head in total agreement. It is such a colossal difference. So I want to compare this to a larger company because, again, my experience base is a lot of founders who came out of a larger company. I do not often work with founders who came right out of college or dropped out of college and have no corporate habits or a point of reference. So what happens when we work for large firms like the ones I worked for when I was an employee is we are hired to be incredibly specialized, right? So, when I went to work at Nestlé, I asked the facilities guy, hey, they'd like me to hang my grad school diploma here. And if you just have a hammer handy, I'll take care of it. I don't want to be trouble. And he goes, what does that degree say? And I said, master's in organizational communication, because I knew I was in trouble already. And he says, does that say facilities management? No. Well, then I hang your diploma. So
Wow.
even he's right. Years, even a decade in a corporate role is going to condition you to a certain mindset that makes you much better in a large company, which is highly niched, highly specialized. Fast forward to you're doing your startup. Now the mindset has to shift to jack of all trades. An awful lot of good enough is good enough. Again, when you're in a big company, you're supposed to be a specialist. You are trying to knock it out of the park every time. Yeah, you need to knock it out of the park every time with your clients as a small business, but also need to spend a lot more time getting the definition of what is out of the park for this client. I can't tell you the first 10 years of my business. God, I look back. How much time did I waste over analyzing the proposal, overthinking things, spending excess time on my analysis when I knew what needed to happen? I knew what the problems were. I knew exactly what the solution should be, or maybe 3 different solutions that they could pick from. Oh, I so overthought it because I still kind of had that big company mindset. But really, this kind of goes back to really getting to know your prospects. If you really get to know your prospects, you can be a lot more efficient in targeting what it is that matters to them. And that may be shorter than what you would target. So in my world, maybe I would target a broader more strategic approach. But maybe I have a client who's just inherently, he has tactical genius. I have several clients who have tactical genius. They don't want to talk about a big old strategy. They're like, no, I need you next week. I have the leadership team together. Here's the outcomes I need. And you know what? They're right. And so as you go into that founder mode, it's a lot of really connecting with what is it that client wants and how can you give it to them with the product or services that you have available to you. The second one is, get used to making way more decisions than you're used to, especially if, like me, you went from a senior IC, I had a manager title, but I had one direct report. Come on. I was an IC. And I make more decisions in a day as a business owner than I probably made in a month as an IC. As an IC, you're responding to and fulfilling many decisions that have already been made. And so get used to making an awful lot of decisions. Well, this one's so boring, but do you have a good accountant? Do you have a good bookkeeper? If you get audited and it doesn't look so good, it's going to suck a colossal amount of time away from your business. And you're still going to be on the hook for it because whether they get it right or not, you're the one, again, who's accountable. Sort of like AI. You're the one who is accountable. So some of these things are very fundamental. Some of these things are shifts in mindsets to be able to be a little more decisive across realms where you don't really understand the realm that well. And some of it is just getting more at ease with the inherent roller coaster. The roller coaster doesn't go away until you get quite a bit bigger. So you'll have big explosions of revenue and then nothing. And then big explosions of revenue and then nothing. And adjusting to that, it's a huge adjustment if you've come out of a corporation or corporate work environment.
Going back to some of the making lots of choices, I'm sure you've seen some amazing choices that were made in a company that really put it on a trajectory for incredible success. And I'm sure you've probably also seen the opposite side where there was a choice that was made that drove it into the ground or took it off the path that it was supposed to go down. Can you talk a little bit about some specific choices that you saw? Like, yes, that was a perfect choice to really succeed in a business, or some fundamental choices that you need to be aware of that you will have to make as a small to medium-sized business in order to really scale?
At the very small level, I think this one might come as a little bit of a surprise. I have seen some very bad choices made in hiring because the founders wanted to hire their friends. They wanted to hire people they already knew. Of course, you trust people you know. You have to move very fast and as one, and you have to come together quickly, and you have to form a culture pretty quickly. And so, the habit would be hire people hire people who are similar to you. But when you keep hiring your friends, it's going to get you a little ways. I will say, when you're very, very small, early startup days, maybe you're self-funded, maybe you're angel funded, but you will hit a point where that it ain't going to cut it anymore. And so I've seen firms really struggle with this because that also triggers what I would call a culture crisis. One of the single most important things you can develop intentionally early in a business is that culture, and to put some real thought into what is actually important to me as a founder. Those are the values that drive the culture. And so looking at that as part of what you're looking for in your hires, looking at that in terms of what you intentionally nurture. Boy, it's easy to let that one slip because startups are crazy. They're very busy. People get fatigued, including founders, and sort of slip on really reinforcing and rewarding that culture. Similar lesser problem I've found is around, again, if you've come from a larger environment, trying to impose systems from your larger environment on your smaller environment. So I'm thinking, I'm not going to name any companies, the successful or otherwise, but I'm thinking of one right now that dropped this performance review process from I don't know where, some very large company into, they're at, about 4,000 employees right now, which is, we're venturing into mid-sized territory, but they're pre-IPO. They're, for many reasons, they're still small. So, this thing sucks so much time during an era when nobody has it. They're doing reviews like twice a year, and they're separating pay from reviews. And one review is about more equity and the other one's about pay. And it's so complicated and it takes so much time. And so when your business is small, you need really simple systems. And then everyone's going to say, well, but then this won't scale with us. That is 100% true. Here's why. No matter what you put in place, every time your company triples in headcount or revenues or any other key measure you want, everything's going to break. Doesn't matter what you put in place. It's all going to break. And so when people say startups and small companies are dynamic, they really are. So when you put a tool set in place that you think is going to work for scale, and then you scale and it doesn't work, or it costs you so much that it actually slows your scale because it took so much money, then, so I would say don't sweat much further than 2 to 3 years out when you're thinking about these systems that you put in place, these platforms, these decisions. It's all going to break. Your processes are going to break. Your culture is going to get harder to maintain. I can tell you a few years ago in my firm, when we literally went from 1 to 3 people over about 3 years, I suddenly noticed, beware the triplets applies to even the tiniest business. Everything broke. And so the way that we did things didn't work anymore. I have long employed a business advisor because I think it's very lonely when you are an entrepreneur. And she said, look, of everything in your business, ops is most neglected. You haven't even written down what your executive coaching process is, yet it's well-defined. It's based on years of refinement. It's what the clients are buying. What are you going to do when all of this additional marketing that you've done pans out and you have no way to convey that to other coaches? Like, you've got your 2 other coaches, but they don't know what your process is. So everything's going to break. And so that becomes part of the journey. So don't flip out when it breaks. You're only going to freak out your people. And I mean everything. It can come all the way down to how you celebrate people's birthdays. It's so easy to remember when there's 10 of you. But when there's 100, it's a lot harder. When there's 1,000, whatever process you use to track it at 100, it ain't working anymore. And now you're going to miss somebody's birthday. And then that employee is going to feel sort of like their spirit is crushed because nobody remembered them. And so it all breaks. Don't worry about it. By the way, I did not invent Beware the Triplets. It's a brilliant Silicon Valley VC. And I am so sorry. I cannot remember her name. But she has funded more successful companies than we could count. Beware the Triplets comes from her. They're coming. You
So,
can't prevent it.
so how do you know? I'm sure they know, but what are some of the signs that your systems are broken that you need to retool and rethink? Because that to me scares me a little bit and gives me a little bit of hope. There's two things in what you said there. You can't build a system for 10 to 15 years, 20 years down the road because the systems you need now are going to be different than the systems are in 20 years. And you're saying even way smaller scale. So you're saying the system for now might work for a little while, but eventually it's going to break because you're going to grow and you're going to have to retool that whole system.
Yeah.
So to me, like, the takeaway from that is build the system for now with some foresight, but just know that it's going to evolve and you're going to have to redo this as you grow.
Yes. And, how many times, when you're thinking back to your pre-entrepreneur days, how many times did you start a job at a new company and went, oh my gosh, that thing's a mess. Why is it like that? And how come those people over there are so resistant to changing it? Well, think about how hard they worked to put that in place to respond to something that broke from an even earlier stage. And so, I quote one of my clients upon his retirement after doing both large companies and startups. And he said, it was just the 2 of us, not in front of anyone else. He goes, I just had the biggest chuckle. What? Why? Why did you have the biggest chuckle? Well, I realized everything I've put in place now is going to become somebody else's problem 3 years from now.
I mean, that's it. But
He solved every problem that they had. And then that recognition.
so it makes me immediately feel 2 things. It makes me feel like Well, shit. I want to have a system that is really robust, that's going to last for a long time. But it also makes me realize, look, I don't have to have a system that's going to work for 20 years. Have the system with some foresight and some growth capability, but make it for now and know that it's going to change.
Yeah.
And that makes me feel a
Totally.
little bit less pressure to produce this robust system that is going to last for 20 years.
There's so much pressure built into a startup, a small business of any size. It's already in there. Don't add more. Don't add more. Really. A little, I love your phrase, with a little foresight. Something that works now with a little foresight. You're going to know when it starts to break. You're going to recognize it. You're going to notice some backlogs. You're going to notice some ball drops that didn't used to happen. It will present itself. And again, before you put on your well-trained big company brain to it and say, oh, well, it must, we must need an incremental improvement here. Step it way back and go, is it just that we're now a little too big for this system? We're a little too complex. Let's step back for a minute and see if maybe we need a different way of doing. By system, I don't just mean tooling. It's also your processes, your ways of doing things. The one thing I would be cautious, though, about not trying to change is your culture. What the culture is what it is. It's that secret sauce that got you this far. So don't look to change a culture, but you probably will notice that the systems and processes you have in place to sustain it and nurture it start to not be so nurturing. That wonderful all hands that you would do every Friday afternoon, and all 25 of you would get in a room together, and you'd have drinks and snacks for everyone. And you'd say, okay, everybody, let's celebrate our successes of this week. I want to call out Joe. I want to call out Marianne. I want to call out these people. There's 100 of you now. It's got to look different. Oh, no, by the way, you're now in 4 locations. So it's got to look different in how you do it. But I would say it's not about changing your culture. The culture ought not break unless there's something sort of fundamentally not quite right about it at the beginning. The processes to sustain it will change. Yeah.
When you are taking on new clients, what's the first process that you have when you're meeting with an executive?
So our starting point is always sizing up what should this leader's top 1 or 2 goals be for their own development. At least one of those goals needs to be behavioral. So by way of example, listening better, being more decisive in some cases. There are dozens. Not adding so much value, which is another way of saying stop getting in there and solving the problems that you have hired all these people to solve, right? Get out of it, right? Adding
Good
too much
micromanaging.
value. Step back, do your level. At least one needs to be behavioral, because that's really where a coach is going to help you a lot. The other can be behavioral, or it can be something that is a little more strategic, like build a plan. So if you're looking at a plan for your organization and how you develop that organization, maybe part of the coaching is I'm helping you do the analysis and sort out that plan. Might be something like get to know the customers better. And that's really more of a do than a behavior, but we might layer in the behavior around really how effectively are you asking probing questions? How effectively are you creating an environment of trust versus interrogating or pitching? Because I have these 10 minutes and I want to make the most of them. So some of these things are behavioral, some are not, but certainly, when I have my advisor hat on versus my coach hat on, advisory is more, what should you do? Coaching is more, what are those behaviors you need to develop and how do you develop those? Because, in that space, from day one, I'm probably going to be giving you daily homework that you do at the end of each day, behaviors that you're going to try every single day. And you're going to reflect at the end of the day if you did your best. Not how effective were you, but did you do your best as you're practicing through these? And then we're going to debrief those, and then we're going to go into the next 2 weeks. So starting with what those goals need to be is extremely important. In a larger firm, that's probably going to, for an executive, that's certainly going to look like a full interview-based 360. I'm going to hear people's perspectives. I'm going to run those through my lens of the hundreds of others that I've coached and say, okay, here's my opinion. This report is, you need to work on these things. You need to do these things more that are strengths that you're not using enough, right? Here's some things that I want you to do immediately. And here are the environments that trigger you to be your best and to be your worst. And we're going to work on when they're worst. How do you prepare to not get triggered? Right? Because whatever it is that you want to do better, we really have to look at that environment and what triggers you in the environment. It's like anything, right? You know, you're like, yeah, I'm going to the gym 3 times a week. And then your environment comes in and you get to the gym once a week. And is that okay or not okay? What triggered that in the environment? So those are the things that we're looking at with the coaching hat on. But you can see why it is so important to zero in on 1 or 2 focused goals, because your coach is going to be very, very specific in how they work with you, what they assigned you to do based on what those goals are. Coaching isn't like training. It's not a preset program. There are things that we do in every coaching program. As we're looking at what those goals should be, we're giving you some assessments, some self-assessments. We're going to have you look at what's your natural leadership style. We're going to teach you how to look for cues in prospects and in other people whose temperaments you don't know, so that you can modify your communication style to meet them where they are, versus what we all do by habit is we try to influence someone with what would influence us. It would work on me, so therefore it must work on you. Doesn't work that way. And so we will be going through a lot of those things regardless, because that self-awareness, that adjustment to others, it's always helpful. There's no exception. We, of course, also look at your saboteurs, those little negative voices I was talking about early.
I've had a business coach my whole career, and I was always shocked at the beginning how many parallels there are from your personal life to your business life. You know, the way that you behave in business tends to mirror how your interactions are in your personal life. And if you're not dealing with the underlying factors and the underlying behavior, it doesn't matter what you do, your business life, it will mirror it. So I always found that really fascinating.
Yes, it couldn't have said it better. That is 100% true. Leadership is from the inside out. It's truly from the inside out.
Jennifer, I'm really glad that we got to talk to you today.
Me too.
If somebody wants to work with you and your company, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
SelbyGroup.com is our website. We've got a contact us page there. Just pop into it and fill it out, and I will personally get back to you. Also on that website, I've posted over the years, I think 120, 130 blogs, all pretty searchable. So if you just want to go, you've got something on your mind, you want to get some advice on it without necessarily engaging a coach, hit the blogs. There's probably something. They're all very, very, very practical. So there's probably something there that can get you started. But otherwise, yeah, hit that contact us page and we're happy to get back to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being on the podcast, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you too. Bye, everyone.